Hello and welcome everyone to the first raid guide for Dawntrail. Today we'll be tackling the AAC Light Heavyweight M1, otherwise known as Black Cat. Before we jump into things, I want to suggest that you have pairs with a DPS with the support, as well as light parties, which is 2 supports and 2 DPS for mechanics later on. We're also going to need some roll stack positions, and Party Finder will go from left to right, tank, healer, DPS. That'll come up later, but for now, just know that this is going to come up. Quadruple crossing is baited on the 4 closest players. The Party Finder will use what is called same bait strat, where you'll have your 4 DPS stand on intercardinals, being hit by the first blast. They will all then move to cardinals, where the supports will then take the next hit on intercardinals. And since both baits went on intercards, all players can then wait on the cardinals for the next follow-up blasts to go off. Biscuit Maker is the tank buster of this encounter. It has a standard tank swap, so the off-tank can invoke after the cast bar is visible. You can invuln this, although it's worth mentioning that a later mechanic will use both tank invulns, so I do not recommend using invulns after the first one, depending on your tank composition. Black Cat will then begin casting 9 lives, which is going to store the next mechanic she uses. The next mechanic she uses is Two Paw, which will be a right to left, or left to right half-room cleave. Make sure you remember which side she cleaved first, as those are going to be the sides that the 2 following shades are going to cleave. The safe slice of the arena will always be diagonal to the next safe slice of the arena. So if left was safe first, move to the left of both clones, and then quickly move to the right of both clones. So during your dodges, Black Cat will use 9 lives again, and the reason for this is the following cast will either be double or quad swipe. Double swipe is going to be a light party stack on east and west, and quad would be a pairs mechanic. She will be storing this for a later dodge as well, so remember if it was pairs or light parties. Another Soulshade will then be casted, followed by a leaping quadruple crossing. This quadruple crossing is going to be executed the same way that it was executed the first time, with you having your 4 DPS baiting inside on intercardinals, and then immediately moving to cardinals as the supports come and take their place. The only thing of note here is that that pairs or light party that we talked about earlier is going to resolve at the end of this, so make sure when you're moving into your final safe spots that you're resolving either pairs or light parties. Bloody Scratch is a massive hitting raid-wide that follows that mechanic and leads us into Mouser. That raid-wide is actually very hard-hitting, so make sure you put a shield and some mitigations on it, as a lot of squishies will randomly fall over if you neglect to do so. Mouser is going to pick panels all over the arena that she is going to hit at least once. Every single one gets hit at least once. But some of them are going to get hit twice. And the ones that are getting hit twice are going to disappear. So if you stand in the middle, only 2 of them, which will always be diagonal, will be safe. And so you can just pick either one of them and wait for the new panels to spawn. So first what's happening here is you will have 4 cracked platforms as well as 4 stable platforms. This will be a roll mechanic. Either all DPS or all supports are going to be picked for either a uppercut or a slam. In the event that you are hit by a slam, you have to make sure that your character is standing on a stable platform, and she will stun you and just hit that platform. The uppercut is the one that gets a little more tricky, as she will spawn behind where your character is facing and knock you forward. The objective is to have all 4 players that get stunned land on a safe platform. In Party Finder terms, the way that this is going to happen is there will always be 2 safe platforms close to melee, and there's going to be 2 that are ranged. So what our objective is if you're playing a melee DPS or a fake melee or a tank, your platform that you're going to want to use is going to be in melee. You're going to pick one of the 2. If you're playing ranged or healer, you're going to want to bias towards the outer platforms. When she's using her uppercut, which looks like she's hunching over and looks like she's about to dash forward, the formula for dodging those is standing at a corner of a square and being knocked to the other corner of the same square. You should always stay in the square that you are resolving, because that clearly indicates where the party needs to be standing, because when you get hit, you're going to do a plus AoE. And so you don't want to be crossing over lanes, because that's just going to confuse your party, because they're going to have to do mechanics while you're being stunned. After the 4 stuns are resolved, your tanks are going to get another Biscuit Maker. Remember, I would not invuln this one. I'm not sure if some tank invulns work out where you're allowed to, but use cooldowns here, tank swap. And then after this buster, she's going to start repairing the platforms. But 2 corners are going to be repaired faster than the others, so you'll either be in northwest and southeast, or northeast and southwest. There will be a knockback from center. It is a very big knockback, followed by a spread. So our objective here is to have Group 1 get knocked to the west corner, and Group 2 get knocked to the east corner. And you're going to want to make sure you adjust really quick and not stack on your friends. After Black Cat recenters herself, she will begin casting 9 lives. For any tanks watching this video, this is the part where the tanks really need to pay attention, because boss movement here is actually very relevant, and we didn't really have any good boss movement in all of Endwalker, but boss movement here is very important. So she's always going to start with a leaping 1-2 paw, no matter what. It's always going to be a claw mechanic, just like to start. The important thing of note here is that because she will either slide left or right, you'll need to remember if she slid left or right. You'll also need to remember if it is outside safe first or inside safe first. So both of these you're going to want to take a mental note of. So she's going to dash to the side, make sure everyone stacks on either the outside or the inside for this mechanic. As soon as she's done with her slashes, she will spawn a Soulshade. That Soulshade is going to repeat that mechanic later. So you'll want to remember if the Soulshade is north or south, and then remember that that shade is going to move left or right, just like the one we just saw. But for now, we'll move on to the next mechanic. Black Cat will then use 9 lives once more, and this time she will slide to the left or right once again using Leaping Quadruple Crossing. This Quadruple Crossing is just like every other one we've resolved up to this point, so you want to have your DPS on inner cards close. First hit goes off, supports will take their place, and then we go to Cardinals and hide. This one will not have a pairs or light party follow-up, so it's just the dodges. As that resolves, Black Cat will cast that Soulshade, and this is where the main tank's job comes into play. There'll be 2 shades on the field, and she's going to pick one at random now, so you could be either of those mechanics. Once she picks a shade, that shade will go in the same direction of jump that she did earlier, but the boss has to be dragged to where that mechanic is being resolved, or else it's a complete mess, because the new claws or conal attacks are being based around the shade, not the boss. So this can get very hectic very quickly if she's not being drugged to the right spot. So I suggest, if you're in a static or something, help the tank identify the spots beforehand, so that way it's not chaos. So she will pick one of the shades. In the event that it is claw first, you'll have to remember earlier it was either outside or inside. As the claw resolves, there will be a light party stack. So you'll want to make sure that as you do the first dodge, you have your light party set up, and you'll both take your blast. And then whichever shade you did not get the first time, you will get the other one the second time. Except the Quadruple Crossing has a bit of a different catch that we're going to talk about. When Quadruple Crossing comes into play again, Black Cat is going to cast Nailchipper. Nailchipper is a roll-based red AoE that will spawn on either all the supports or all the DPS. Other than that, you're going to resolve this quad the same way you always do, except all Nailchipper is doing is she's telling you who can't go first. So if you've been doing DPS first this whole time, but then DPS get these debuffs, She's telling you no. You have to put the red AoEs on cardinals where it's safe, and let supports go first this time. So the people that didn't have the AoEs will then bait on inner cardinals, and at that time, the initial Nailchippers will resolve, so the players that had the Nailchippers can then go to the new inner cards and resolve as normal. The Nailchipper AoEs aren't too big, and they also don't do lethal damage if you get hit by them as an off roll. Like if it wasn't your turn but you get clipped, you will survive with mitigation and shields. So if you have massive utility resources here, I highly recommend throwing stuff like Panheima out or Tank Mitts, Shake, all that crap. Throw it on Nailchipper, but otherwise you resolve it just like any other quad, except she's telling you who's going first and who's not. Once the Tempestuous Tear line AoEs or the Nailchippers have resolved, Black Cat is going to fire off another massive raid wide with Bloody Scratch, and then lead us into Mouser 2. Mouser 2 is about 95% the same as Mouser 1. The players that did not get selected for the stuns will be selected this time, and the added mechanic here is that as each of the 4 stuns goes off, she has a total of 2 moves, and she's going to use them both twice. The first of which is Splintering Nails. This is roll-based cone AoEs. So you'll have your DPS stacked together, your healers stacked together, and your tanks stacked together. When you look at the party finder and you see THD, that means tank, healer, DPS, that is the order from left to right, looking at the boss of where they're stacking. So tanks on the left, healers in the middle, and DPS on the right. You can fit all this in one platform, they're pretty small. The other option she has as players are getting stunned is a line stack AoE. So like I said, she's going to use each of these twice, and no more than twice, but she will use them both 2 times. At the same time, you resolve the stuns the same way. Make sure you're standing on your safe platform because you're going to have a plus AoE, and you want to non-verbally communicate where that plus AoE is going to be at. So be there early, stand there, and don't get knocked across. Once the stuns are resolved, we'll be seeing a copy-paste of 2 mechanics here. First being Biscuit Maker, which is our tank buster with a swap. Don't use your invulns. And then after this, we will have the Knockback, followed by Spread AoEs, just like before. Raining Cats is up next. This is what we saved our invulns for. Quick breakdown of the mechanic is we have 2 tethers. Both tether players are going to get a Vuln and a Cone AoE, so you can't get hit by it more than once. At the same time, there's going to be a near bait and a far bait. The objective here is to have the 2 melee players take the first cone from the tether, so bang, both get hit. At the same time, we need to make sure that the near and far baits are not stacked up behind the boss, or they will get a vuln and die. After the first hit, you're going to have both tanks run forward and take the tethers and stay max melee. They're also going to turn their invulns on, or they will die. The rest of the party can stack in tight behind the boss. All 6 players stack in real tight. The penultimate mechanic before the enrage is Copycat. Black Cat is going to do a 1-2 paw in the middle of the arena, which is the half-room cleave. At the same time, a clone is going to be doing rectangular AoEs, followed by a massive circle where she lands over and over again. For this, I suggest using a big shield as well as mitigation, and intentionally eating the claw, but making sure to position out of the circular or line AoEs. It does not give it damage down, so I highly suggest just shielding it. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you have any questions about anything in the fight, how any mechanic works, debuff, burst timings, or anything in Party Finder, do feel free to leave me a comment. I appreciate all of the criticisms, both good and bad. We'll have every other fight for the tier as well, a guide for it, hopefully with some PF context for every single one. And thank you guys. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, and good luck with your clears, and roll high.